Now, yesterday we got another new trailer for the upcoming Star Wars animated series, The Bad Batch, and the very first thing I have to say about it is, visually, it looks pretty incredible. It is, of course, using the same animation style that we saw evolve during the course of the Clone Wars series, and it's just amazing how far it's come since that Clone Wars movie back in 2008, where, especially in comparison to how it looks today, everything sort of looked wooden and blocky and just pretty rough overall. And so it's great to see that the lasting legacy of the Clone Wars is not just that it was a great show in itself, but that it gave us this Star Wars animation style that, again, these days looks fantastic. I'm so glad they're going back to it after Rebels and Resistance moved away from it, and most likely because of budget reasons. And who knows, maybe 10 years from now this style will be so perfected that we look back at the Bad Batch and say how rough it looks in comparison to what they're currently doing. But anyway, speaking of the legacy of the Clone Wars, this show, maybe not directly, is looking like it's going to be a sequel of sorts to it in a lot of ways. It's obviously going to follow the Bad Batch, which means hopefully we'll get to see what happens to the clones and or what becomes of them after the war is over, in the broader sense, I mean. Because sure, clearly the Bad Batch is going to make their way in the galaxy somehow, they'll find a new place or reason for being, but it'd be really interesting and cool to see what happens to the rest of the clones, especially those who partook in Order 66 and will have to live with the guilt over what they did. And we do see a little bit of that in Rebels, I suppose, with Wolf, but it'd be great to get a lot more of it in this new show. And one of the reasons I really think we'll see some of that is because the clones have become fan favorites thanks to, of course, the Clone Wars. Perhaps the best part of that series was showing their side of the war, how they felt about it, and how they felt about the Jedi they fought for. The work of D. Bradley Baker to voice all the clones too, and to give so many of them their own little unique personalities, was incredible. And it's no surprise the sort of sequel to Clone Wars is then going to be about a group of clones. Though I do think it's a little curious to use the Bad Batch since they're only seen in that one story arc, and I think the reason why the end of that arc was changed, why Echo now joins the team, is because they wanted to have at least one sort of more traditional and well-known or familiar clone to be there as well, when that goes back to Domino Squad that we kind of followed from the beginning. Another way this will be sort of a sequel to Clone Wars, I think, is we'll start to see the next phase of the galaxy, the one that comes immediately after the Clone Wars ends, where the Empire starts to tighten their grip, kind of to quote Leia, who said something similar to Tarkin. And speaking of Tarkin, he's almost featured in this trailer, as if he might be sort of an overarching antagonist, which I'm more than okay with. Anyway, to kind of quote Leia, the more the Empire tightens their grip, the more will slip through their fingers. And seeing Saw Gerrera in the trailer, voiced by the actor who originally did him in Clone Wars again, it implies we might very well see the early days of the rebellion, which is cool and all, but I'm honestly maybe more excited to see a bit more of the criminal underworld here. Because we've done a lot of setup for the rebellion already or previously. We also have the Andor show coming up, which is going to deal with that a lot. And so seeing the shady side of the galaxy more would be nice. Maybe we'll even see how Maul rises to power with Crimson Dawn. And along these same lines, I think something else the series is going to connect to, albeit probably somewhat loosely, is The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett. I'd say there's about a 99.9% chance that Fennec Shand, who we see in the trailer, will meet up with Boba Fett at some point in this series, and that the two will begin their partnership that comes to fruition at the end of The Mandalorian Season 2, when Boba sort of takes up the throne vacated by Jabba, the one that Bib Fortuna had been keeping warm, and we see Fennec Shand at his side. Yet again, the Filoniverse, as I like to call it, will continue to grow. The other really noteworthy part about this trailer then has to be the kid we see in it, whose name is apparently Omega, which is an interesting name because it tends to mean the last or the final or the conclusion of something. And to me, this could mean they're the last iteration of sorts of the Jango clones. Though I've already seen a few people throw some pretty wild theories out there, like this is a clone of Palpatine, that it could even be Rey's father, which takes me back to the days when everyone was a potential suspect when it came to being Rey's parents. But anyway, I don't think any of that will be the case. I don't think this kid will have anything to do with Palpatine or the sequels. I think this is a clone of Jango's of some kind, hence the Bad Batch takes them along, or they feel justified to do so, because there's a sort of relation there. Not that they're just taking some random kid they meet. They have a family connection to them, if you will. I've also seen some people confused about whether this is a boy or a girl, and my guess is that it's a girl, and I'm going to refer to them that way for the rest of the video, so I'm sorry if I turn out to be wrong. But I'm basing my guess on the kid wearing the same sort of headpiece that Nala Se, a Kaminoan female, wears. I suppose that doesn't have to mean anything either way. It's just the guess I'm making. It could also then imply that Nala Se has a close connection or keen interest in this child for some reason. I think there's obviously going to be something special about her. Maybe she'll turn out to be a successful Force-sensitive clone or something, which might tie into what's going on in The Mandalorian with the subject that they're constantly talking about and the vats that we see in a Season 2 episode, as well as them wanting Grogu's blood. Either way, it does seem like she's been sheltered on Kamino her whole life, because she gets very wide-eyed and excited when we see her on the ship with the Bad Batch and they're making the jump to hyperspace, like it's the first time she's ever done that, the first time she's ever left the planet. And quite clearly, with that wide-eyed wonder, this is the everyman character in the series, or maybe the every kid character, I should call it, the one who kids, especially who maybe aren't so much into Star Wars quite yet, are supposed to relate to and connect with, and that will grow with them as the series goes on. They then become big fans of Star Wars and watch and consume everything else, of course. This was the same deal with Ahsoka in Clone Wars and Ezra in Rebels. They were mainly there for the kids to connect with. And I was even talking about this in a video a week or so ago, in a video about Ezra, that so far we hadn't seen that type of character in The Bad Batch, which was maybe a little surprising and made me wonder if they were going to be gearing the show a lot more towards adults than kids. But sure enough, there's our kid character. Which, don't get me wrong, is fine. I absolutely think animated shows should remain a good entry point for the younger viewers, as long as they can continue to walk that fine line between making them too much of an entry point for the younger viewers, kind of like Resistance was, or too much for the kids. Because there are certainly a lot of adult Star Wars fans who love these shows, and plenty of them became fans from watching one of the animated shows. And so I'm going to assume, just like with Ahsoka and Ezra before her, that many won't be huge fans of Omega at first, but with any luck, she'll grow on them in time. And speaking of time, the first episode, which airs on May the 4th, will be 70 minutes long, about the equivalent of 3 episodes or a 3-episode arc. We still don't know how many episodes total we'll get, and I'd imagine it could be anywhere from 12 to 22, though I'm going to guess more on the lower end. But we do know right now that Friday the 7th, a few days after that first episode, we'll be getting the second one, and then another episode every Friday from then on, as it's been done on Disney Plus before. Anyway, not much else to say here. I'm sure you all saw the trailer and don't need me to break it down for you moment by moment, frame by frame, and tell you about the 101 things you missed that you probably actually didn't. Instead, I'll just say again that yes, this looks really good, both in terms of the visuals and in terms of the story that it's likely going to offer us, even though I wasn't the hugest fan of the Bad Batch themselves. Not that I didn't like them, they're fine and interesting. It's just that I'm not sure I ever would have asked for a whole series about them, and so I hope and I think they will grow on me more as the show goes on. And I'm also assuming this could end up being a bit anthology style at times, like Clone Wars was, that we may stray away from the main group from time to time, or from the Bad Batch, and get a wider look at the galaxy. Either way, this is looking to be the best May the 4th ever. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you thought of the trailer, and how excited you are, or maybe are not, for the series. And what do you think the deal is with this kid? Is it a Jango clone, a Palpatine clone, or something else entirely? Whatever the case may be, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.